You'll join us later today. I will, Hope that you'll join us later today. I've got both of the varsity soccer coaches here today, Coach Scott Morrissey and Coach Tony Daniels. See you soon. Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Richard Sachs, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Rio Grande and Rio Grande Community College in beautiful southeastern Ohio. And I am delighted that my two guests today are the two varsity soccer coaches here at the University of Rio Grande. Coach Scott Morrissey, who for I think about 25 years, I haven't done the math, I know it's more than I have fingers and toes. But Scott's been here about 25 years, or he'll correct me in a minute, as men's soccer coach. And right next to me is Tony Daniels, who is the women's soccer coach for the last 2 years.
Yes.
Is that right? Yes. For the last 2 years, and also runs the Line Center, which is where, this is just fair warning to everybody, I try to swim laps between 5 and 6. That's not a pretty sight. And we're generally open till 8, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so correct. I just avoid 5 to 6 and you won't see the provost swimming laps, and you're fine on that. But I have these two gentlemen here for a couple reasons. Number one, the quality of student athletes we have here is extraordinary. And the kind of student athletes that these two coaches recruit, we put student before that hyphenated athlete. They are students and they are athletes. And I love to watch the game. I don't fully understand soccer. If you saw me coach youth soccer years ago, you'd understand that. But I love watching the game. They run great programs. And something else I want to talk about either early or late in our half hour is we have reseeded the field or resodded the field, and some incredible things have occurred with that, in part because we have some endowment money. We have people who have specifically given money. This is not coming out of college costs or anything. And as I come in here between 7 and 7:45 most Sunday mornings, I see one or both of these guys walk in the fields in the morning like a bunch of farmers concerned about the crop that's going to come up. So I want to hear about the grass. It's starting to look beautiful. We'll hear about all those things. Age does have its perquisites, so Coach Morrissey, we're going to start with you.
Sounds good.
Was 25 ballpark?
25 was in the ballpark. It's actually going on 30.
Wow.
But who's counting?
Okay.
So I've always said that I haven't worked a day in my life, so I'm very fortunate that way.
And I'm going to interrupt you once and say Coach Morrissey coached the national NAIA champions in 2003 when I was not here.
Correct.
And in 2015 when I was here.
Correct.
And I have chills even now thinking about that. Extraordinary young men and a great coach. Tell us about those seasons or anything else.
Well, those 2 seasons, and in fact, Tony was the assistant in both of those and has been with me for basically the duration of my career. And then he obviously took over as the women's coach. Those seasons were extraordinary, as you say, but at the same time, you know, we started kind of getting over the hump back in like 1998, 99, 2000, and we've been a real prominent program ever since. So
yeah.
Those 2 seasons happened to work out well. We were close 3 or 4 other times, just didn't work out for whatever reason, but special seasons nonetheless.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the recruiting, because as I have enjoyed the last 4 years watching soccer games, there's a good sampling of men from Central America. There's a good sampling of men from the British Isles. We always have 1 or 2 local kids who's get significant playing time. I think generally from Jackson, River Valley, or Galley Academy High School.
Sure. I mean,
yeah.
we've always done international recruiting, and that started back in the early 90s with Evan Davis. Evan was certainly an advocate for international recruitment. He helped supplement scholarship for those student athletes. Started in Wales, kind of branched out to England, Scotland, Ireland, and then kind of went from there. And blossomed into a
Right.
kind of a global program.
Right. Well, it's interesting because now we have one student who studied at one of the Chinese universities we have an agreement with, and one thing I've really emphasized with people as we go into China is you have to make a good first impression, and then if you do, you have that university and the people they connect with and everything else, and I think that seems to be what's happened. That word of mouth has said you can get a good education, it's a good program.
Correct. Yeah. So it's been a good situation. A lot of the graduates, have elected to stay in this country, married, families now, and so we've got a really good alumni base, and so it's been exciting.
Good. Tony, tell us about your various roles here. Now, I know the rumor is that you have some 216 in your background, and we can talk about that later, but the things you do here, I know you're running the Line Center, which has 2 huge gyms and an Olympic-sized pool and things like that, as well as your women's varsity, as well as some other things. So tell us about some of your responsibilities here.
Yeah, correct. So when I was Scott's assistant part-time, and then job came open, I got my bachelor's here at the university in sports and exercise with a business management minor.
Okay.
And I was grateful enough to interview for the job and to get the job. My job title is Director of Campus Sports and Recreation, and part of that, yes, I run the Line Center, which have the 2 gymnasiums. We have 2 racquetball courts. We have an aerobics room. We have a free weight room. We have an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And then also do the scheduling for various activities that we go ahead and try to host on a regular basis.
Great.
So the local electrical company, Buckeye Rural, they'll have their annual stockholders pancake breakfast here, their meeting. And then we'll do health fairs, we'll do college fairs, etc.
Right. Now, we're running both JV and varsity teams in both your sports now, and obviously the JV in part is like whatever kind of offense, whatever kind of defense you run, you're teaching that to your JV players so that they can step in. Is there a type of player, and this goes for either or both of you, that you look for? For example, my background is basketball, and generally you have a fast breaking team that takes outside shots, or if you have a huge team, you slow down the ball and you do a lot of isolation, 2-on-2 left side or 2-on-2 right side. I always argued that you're not a fast breaking coach or you're not a slow down coach. It depends on the players who show up, right? Mm-hmm. Or are you actually looking, for example, for quicker, smaller players who may not be as strong because you like speed? I know every time Michigan plays against a team from the South or the West Coast, it always seems like the Michigan guys are slow, and those Florida State or UCLA kids are so fast. And in part is, my understanding is that's because in the Big Ten, it's 3 yards and a ball of dust, and there's a lot more running in the Big Ten. So therefore, we draw large linemen. Therefore, we're not as quick as some of those Southern teams that are playing 5 wide receivers. So how is it in soccer? Is there a type of female student athlete you're looking for, like she should be 5'9" and 130 pounds and run a 4.4 40, or do you just look for quality, or is it like a used car that you don't get to pick exactly, you just look over the used cars and see what works for you?
Well, I mean, for me, making the transition back, this will be the 3 years ago, to the women's game, I think America is the forefront in women's soccer.
Really?
Now, the big, strong, fast, yes, I think those girls go to bigger schools, NCAA schools. Yeah. But there's a lot to be said for a 5'2", a 5'4", a 5'5" girl. Yes, I'm looking for athletic ability. I'm looking for academically sound girls, both in the classroom, because that's going to bring more out on the field as well. And I think that coincides with any sport. But the technical ability to play the game, utilizing both feet, the weight of the pass, etc. So someone that's going to, want to be a winner, want to be infectious out there.
Somebody who plays smart.
Yes.
I know in basketball we have a term like he's 5'9", but he plays tall.
Correct.
And so you want somebody who plays smart. The same thing LeBron always said, you wants smart guys on the team so that he knows if he drives in, that guy's going to be there and he can hit him with the pass because he's going to be filling the lanes. So you're looking for that kind of wise soccer player.
And I think the biggest transition for me when I made the switch is females are very analytical. So you tell them to go A, B, and C, they do A, B, and C, which is great because they do what you're asking. But yes, I'm looking, from the men's game, the man will say, well, why do I have to go to B if my end all product is C? So they skip that process. Females do that, but it's also a learned trait that you're trying to teach them on a regular basis, and sort of like think outside the box.
Okay.
So
are there values that both, I don't mean values in terms of being a good person and not cheating, but are there like strategic values that both the teams share? For example, I didn't know lacrosse well at all when I went off to college, but I went to college in suburban Philadelphia, and there's all these people from Maryland and Long Island who had grown up playing lacrosse. The goalie on our team was Scotty Burns from Maryland. He had been recruited by Johns Hopkins, which is D1, like great lacrosse. He wanted, Johns Hopkins is a great education, but he wanted to go to Haverford for the education and go to medical school, and he ended up going to medical school. Scotty was the goalie. It's the only goalie in any sport I've ever seen where he got so frustrated with the other Haverford guys, he made a save, and he would frequently run almost up to midfield and then, pass and then run back. This time he was so frustrated, he ran 3/4 of the way down before he finally had like a 4-on-2 break going and then shoveled off and then ran back. I don't think that ever would have happened in a D1 game, right? But we had a D1 player playing D3 for us. Nobody complained. And I don't know lacrosse real well, but I know generally the goalie doesn't make a save and run 3/4.
Right.
Obviously, I've seen your goalies really stay close to home. And I don't know soccer well enough. Sometimes they'll boot it, and sometimes they'll just kick it on the ground, and sometimes they'll just roll it. But do you have certain guidelines, like on our team, the goalie would never go.
Right.
Do you have things like that or not?
Yeah, one of the things that I look for in a goalkeeper is the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper tends to be an extension of a field player. So for me, I look for a goalkeeper who is comfortable with the ball at their feet, comfortable being able to come off of his line, and sometimes generally out of the 18-yard box to clean up anything that's long over the top that gets played in behind our back line. So that's a very key component to, having a good quality goalkeeper.
Sure.
And we didn't necessarily have that base covered last season, but I'm hoping to this next season.
Yeah,
Okay.
your goalkeeper is your leader, and they're the ones that are also communicating too.
Right.
So both in the men's game and the women's game, that goalkeeper is instrumental in regards to setting up where the defense should be.
It's like a center fielder. Yeah, I see that. You see them barking to the defense people.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And help me with the midfielders. I mean, they can go the whole field, right?
Yeah, midfielders generally, what I look for in a midfielder is someone who is physically fit, someone very quick, someone that is technically very good with the ball, and someone who is capable of playing from box to box. And that is a very specialized kind of position where you really have to have, some of your top players and your top fitness level players playing in the middle, because they're going forward, they're defending, they're going right, they're going left. So they've got to be able to, 90 minutes and be physically fit, very demanding positions.
Now, as you guys have been talking, a Bo Schembechler quote came up, and I know you're Ohio guys, and this might make you vomit in your mouth a little bit, but Bo in 1988, the second to last year he coached, he was filmed in the locker room with his famous 1.5 minute the team speech. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. You should definitely YouTube it if you don't know it. But he's essentially saying, you guys are going to go off, you'll sign contracts, you'll play for the pros. That's not like this. Now you're on a team.
Right.
And he says, you know what's important? And he says it 3 times, the team, the team, the team. Whatever you do, think about how it affects your team.
Right.
Whatever you achieve, you're achieving because you're part of a team. And I've even had Ohio State loyalists say, please send me the link to that. I love that sentiment. I can also say, and I swore I would never say this publicly till I retired, some of my best faculty members are people who played team sports, not the tennis players and golfers who played on their own,
Right.
or like the tennis players who were third singles and they wanted to be second singles, so they're playing against somebody else. But it's the football players and basketball players and soccer players who thought, I'm not going to score a goal, but I'm going to give up my body and make a block on this.
Right.
And by doing that, it helps the team.
Sure.
So, I mean, that to me is some of the beauty of a team sport.
Well, and I think that's one thing that with the men's program as well as the women's program, we preach on a regular basis about team first. And the closer a team plays for one another, the harder it is for that team to lose.
Yeah.
And it's not about those girls or those guys hanging with each other outside the playing surface itself, but it's a common trait that no one's bigger than the team itself.
Right,
So-
right. Good. Well, listen, I wanted to talk at least half this time about soil science a little bit. And the closest, I mean, I love cutting the lawn because I can see exactly what I've done,
Right.
and I'm very sensitive to plants and growing things because, I didn't eat, my brothers and I didn't eat each week. If the front and back wasn't cut, the garbage is out, laundry's done. Since I was in 7th grade, you can probably tell I do my own laundry, but still, the whole idea of trying to get the job done. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and how that affects soccer? And
Yeah, I
your
mean,
teams?
I'll kind of lead into the other part of the discussion. We've encountered a lot of turf issues with our playing surfaces. And, the sport of soccer is the most important aspect of the game itself is the surface you play on. And if you got a good quality surface, it promotes better quality play. And we have had a number of turf management issues over the last 10 to 12 years. And it just got to the point where every time we needed the field to be a certain way and ready to go in August, it's always dying out because of the heat of the summer. So through a lot of research, consulting, we decided to try Bermuda. Bermuda grass is typically a southern grass, but we've seen over the course of the last 7-8 years, our summers have been extended. It's been very, very hot.
Yeah.
And we saw in the last 12 months, the Columbus Crew put in a facility with Bermuda. Denison University successfully grew Bermuda. Cincinnati Bengals training facility is latitude 36 Bermuda. So I got all of the research together and presented it, and we raised the money. And mid-May, we planted Bermuda on both the game field and one of our practice fields. And it has been a 7-day-a-week
Really?
process. But if you go out and see the facility today, it is absolutely beautiful. The golf coach was even saying, are we going to be able to putt on it? And the truth is that, we're going to keep the grass at about 3/4 of an inch. It is magnificent. It is coming in. We still got about 3 or 4 more weeks before we have to use the practice facility, about 6 weeks before the game facility is going to get used. And I can say honestly that we will have probably the best playing surface. People will be amazed when they see it.
That's wonderful.
Oh,
That's
it's
wonderful.
fantastic.
So, and 3/4 inch length because, again, I've never coached soccer seriously, but I have coached baseball seriously, and I've talked to the person cutting the grass. Like if I had a team that ran a lot,
Right.
you could affect that, like how fast the ball is going to go through. Do you do the same thing in
Yeah,
soccer?
so not necessarily that. The Bermuda is a weed, and the more frequently you mow it, and the shorter you mow it, the faster it grows. It's a crazy, crazy concept, but the shorter and tighter it becomes, the better the surface is, and the thicker it becomes, and so it really does well. So the shorter, the better.
Okay. And in terms of the speed of the team, that's not a factor?
Well, we
now?
hope we're going to be fast.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
we got to figure that
Yeah.
out.
Because I remember coaching Little League. I'd be at other places where the grass was like 3 inches. I'd go, that's not fair.
Correct.
But they would cut it, and there weren't specifications in Little League, so you could let the grass grow long if you wanted to,
Yeah.
or cut it short.
And back when I was with the men's program, some teams would do that.
Yeah.
As
Right.
That was a
slow
tactic.
down the ball.
tactic.
Yeah, slow down the ball.
Rio's coming in, and they're very, very quick, so we're going to let the grass grow.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. And there aren't guidelines for it because, for example,
There is now.
you couldn't have a 500-foot wall in baseball. I
Right.
think 460 or something is the limit, but they have to be 300 down the line.
We
so,
do
yeah.
have some guidelines.
Okay.
There are some guidelines for the height of the grass. But when you talk about Bermuda's not going to grow any more than an inch and a half or so. And if it's that thick and that tall, it's going to be a really difficult surface to play on. So again, for what we're trying to promote with the surface and having it be so relatively new, the more frequently we cut it and the shorter, the faster it's going to fill in and the better the surface is going to be.
Okay.
So that's our goal.
And I think there's a relevant John Havlicek story at this point because Coach Morrissey's wearing a Boston Red Sox cap.
Right.
And so if you don't know Hondo Havlicek, he was an Ohio State grad, I think,
Yes.
but he
Yes.
played for years for the Boston Celtics in the old Garden with the parquet floor. And supposedly, the story is he knew where the dead spots were on the floor.
Correct.
So as a defender, he would move the person toward the dead spots, and then instead of the ball coming up to here, it would come up to there, and that's when Hondo would make the steal.
Right.
So I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the story. Now I have to believe, and I knew my Shaker Heights High floor, I knew my Haverford College floor, and we knew that back in the 70s at least. You know, they'd resurface it, but there were still dead spots, and you knew where they were. The same thing's got to be true with an athletic field, right? In terms of drainage, or do you try to flatten everything out so that that's not the case?
Well, for both Tony and I being at Rio for as long as we've been here, we know where some of the drainage issues are, where the water holds. So, you know, we've got that kind of stuff figured out.
And the
too.
players know that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is the poor drainage, is it because there's clay underneath, or is it the quality of there's clay down here too?
Clay,
Okay.
tons of clay.
Because Shaker Heights, Cleveland Heights, that's just a 300-foot mound of clay on the east side.
Well, we've got a ton of
so,
it here.
So nothing drains, and that affects gardens in Shaker Heights. Yeah.
We've got the
because
same
clay
issue here.
is permeable, though. The water's not going to go through it. It's going to go around it, right? Yeah.
So,
you have
we're trying to work on that as well.
Okay.
Top dressing with sand. And
Okay.
So it's again, you see us out there at 7 o'clock in the morning with walk behind aerifier. We're trying to do that process about every 10 days. It promotes more growth and more drainage for the playing surface.
Opens up the field.
Yeah, good. Well, with the World Cup going on, and I'm sorry, I'm such an American. As soon as USA didn't qualify, my interest went down. And as I visited my sons in Colorado, the one from California loves soccer, and he's following. And he said, Dad, don't you? I go, I'm really not that interested. I said, is that an ugly American? He goes, no, I understand it totally. However, I'm going to watch. So are we down to 4 teams or 8 teams at this point?
Well,
Do you know?
right now it's going to be almost down. It was in the semifinals yesterday and today. So out of the semifinals,
so we're done.
Belgium was playing France, and France won 1-0.
Right.
And right now England is, I think, beating Croatia 1-0.
It was at halftime. It was 1-0 to England.
The 100 Years' War, France and England. They
Correct.
fought for 1,000 years.
Correct.
Oh, what a great final that would be.
Well,
so
if
we're
it
on
comes
the
about.
cusp of that. Okay.
Absolutely.
And who would you guys pick? Not in terms of your own heritage and stuff, but tell me from a strategic viewpoint, who's stronger, France or England, if that's what it ends up being?
I think France is probably the stronger team in that sense. The deeper team, the more dynamic team. England, though, has the last time they won the World Cup was back in 1966, and England was also quote unquote the forefathers of soccer itself.
What
So-
a football crazy country not
Yes.
to have won it for over 50 years.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would say for me, I think probably France is a bit more technical, but it would not surprise me at all if England wins the World Cup.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not at all.
Yeah. Well, we have a few more minutes left. Back to Rio Soccer. How many women and how many men are ideal for you to have varsity and JV?
I'll answer it. For me, I like to have a varsity roster of 18 to 20 and then a second team roster of 14 to 15. And then there's some fluctuation. Some of those tier players that are second team guys that play quite a bit, that are on the cusp of being on the varsity. We have some of those guys transition to the first team, and then some first-team guys may transition to the second team. So there's always a
Just
little
like
bit
the
of
British
fluctuation.
League, the bottom team gets dropped and the top one goes up kind of thing?
Based
Okay.
on performance and how well someone's doing at the time.
Yeah.
And the door is always open. I mean, it's what the kids make of it.
Okay.
So, you know, but I'm about the same way
Okay.
in that sense, yes.
Okay. So, of course, you want more on your varsity team so the JV get more playing time. They're not just sitting
Correct.
JV bench.
Yes,
So, yeah.
Correct.
Well, good. Okay. Well, any final parting comments for our audience about soccer or the fields or anything else?
Well, for me, I'll start first by saying that we encountered a great deal of support from alumni, from people in the community to make our project get off and running. And it will still be a process that we go through probably until the next growing season. But I think people would be very, very pleased with the donations that they've made, because it's made a significant difference on the playing surfaces. And again, for kids in the community that come out and utilize our facility, as Evan and Elizabeth Davis won it many, many years ago, you won't find a better surface to play on.
That's great.
So we're really excited about that.
And I think, you know, the same thing with the alumni and the family. I mean, Scott and I are both big family people, and we try to run our program like that.
Sure.
And the thing is, we both have 10 home games this year. You know, so I encourage the people in the community to come out.
great.
Rockets over Rio is big home games for us, and to go ahead and see the final product.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. It's just a wonderful setting here in Rio Grande, Ohio. Just go to the Bob Evans. Keep driving. If you're coming from Gallipolis or from the east, take a left, and you're right there at our playing fields. And again, we'll start having some games in late August, and we'd love to see you here. Again, my sincere thanks to Coach Morrissey and to Coach Daniels. Thanks very much for coming. Hope to see all of you at Rio soccer games this fall and also around town. Thanks very much.